Reports are emerging that a rift is widening amid growing tension between Prince Harry and King Charles.
At 7:42 on a grey London morning, King Charles entered his private study, carrying a decision no father should ever have to make. Waiting beside a black dispatch box was a document bearing Harry's name and consequences that would reach far beyond one wounded family. Charles read the final page twice, lifted his pen, and signed. By the time the palace doors opened, the king's youngest son had lost his final protected place inside the monarchy. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The signature created the Sovereign Family Status Directive, a fictional royal order defining who could act for the crown. Harry could no longer represent the monarch, receive confidential briefings, use royal residences without permission, or be considered for temporary constitutional duty. Charles had not removed his son from the family. He had drawn a permanent line between that family and the institution he was sworn to protect. Charles remained seated after the pen left his hand. Across from him stood the empty chair Harry had occupied during a reconciliation attempt, when anger had briefly softened into hope. The king pressed 2 fingers against the page, then looked towards that chair as though expecting an answer from thousands of miles away. None came. The silence felt heavier than the document. Camilla entered after the ink dried. The queen consort studied her husband's face and understood that the decision had wounded him before it reached Harry. She asked whether he was certain. Charles did not look up. "I am certain of the duty. I am not certain I will ever forgive the cost." She moved closer, but he kept one hand over the signature, guarding it like a scar. A sealed appendix lay beneath the directive. An appendix is an attached section holding information too sensitive for the document, and this one was known only to Charles, William, and the keeper of the Privy Seal, the official safeguarding the monarch's decisions. Inside was the record of one incident involving Harry. The moment concern hardened into certainty. 2 copies left under guard. One went to the Constitutional Archive, the record of Crown decisions. The other traveled to Harry's legal representatives. A palace secretary received an order. Nothing could change without both the sovereign and the heir. As the courier departed, William opened a note from his father. 6 words waited inside. "He must hear it from us first." But before Harry could understand what had been taken from him, the people closest to the crown had to confront what the document exposed about each of them. Behind the constitutional language stood 3 men, bound by blood and divided by years of anger. Charles had signed as sovereign, but he would suffer as a father. William had supported the decision as heir, yet knew it might destroy what remained of his relationship with Harry. And thousands of miles away, the younger prince was about to learn that the palace had not merely closed a door, it had removed his name from the list of those permitted to knock. Charles felt the burden long after the document had left his desk. Age had sharpened his fear that unresolved family conflict could outlive him and fall directly into William's reign. The king understood that every private argument now carried public consequences, and every delay made the future less stable. He had acted to protect the crown, the institution through which the monarch performs official duties, but the decision had forced him to wound the son he still loved. William carried a different kind of pain. As heir, meaning the person next in line to become sovereign, he believed the monarchy could not survive if confidential conversations, security disputes, and family grievances were repeatedly turned into weapons. Yet the prince also knew whose name stood inside the directive. Harry was not merely a risk to be managed. He was the younger brother William had once protected, defended, and believed would remain beside him for life. Harry sat at his kitchen table when the sealed notification arrived. He broke the envelope, expecting another formal message about security or scheduling, but his face changed when he reached the paragraph declaring his separation from future crown service. Permanent. He read it once. Then again, the words did not soften. Meghan watched the color drain from her husband's expression. She moved towards him and reached for the pages, but he pressed one hand over them, as though the document itself might take something more. Harry looked at her and whispered, "My father has finally made me a visitor in my own family." She remained beside him, asking him to breathe, but he could not stop reading. The final signature delivered the deeper blow. William's name appeared beneath Charles's, confirming through a formal countersignature, a second signature showing support for an official decision, that the future king intended to enforce the separation. Harry stared at it longer than any other line. Catherine had known the night before. During a private conversation recorded in William's personal account of the meeting, she warned him that necessary choices could still leave permanent scars, especially for the children who would inherit the silence. He listened, but he did not withdraw his support. Harry turned to the final page. One phrase stopped him cold. The Windsor Library incident. Meghan asked what it meant. He did not answer. He had believed that moment was buried forever. That hidden reference led directly to the moment when frustration became a threat, and when Charles decided reconciliation could no longer be built on trust alone. The document had not begun inside a legal office. It began months earlier in the Windsor Castle Library, during a meeting arranged to prevent the family from breaking completely. No cameras were present. No aides remained in the room. Charles arrived hoping to establish peace, while Harry arrived demanding proof that he still mattered. What followed lasted only 27 minutes, but one sentence spoken beside a locked door became the point of no return. Charles had invited his younger son after months of strained messages and failed attempts at private contact. The king wanted a limited family arrangement that would allow personal meetings, now direct health updates, and quiet time together, without restoring official royal duties. Those duties meant public work carried out on behalf of the monarch, and returning Harry to them would have reopened questions about trust, security, and responsibility. Charles believed he was offering a narrow path back to family. Harry believed he was being offered another controlled form of exclusion. Harry entered expecting more. He wanted firm answers about police protection, access to royal accommodation, attendance at major ceremonies, and the future place of his children at family occasions. For him, those issues were not separate. They were proof of whether he and his family still belonged. The younger prince listened as his father spoke carefully, but each condition sounded like another reminder that the palace no longer trusted him. The conversation broke when Charles refused to guarantee Harry a formal place at major state events. A state event is an official national occasion attended by royals in service of the crown, not simply a private family gathering. Harry pushed his chair backwards and accused his father of standing aside while William erased him from royal life. The king's expression tightened. He told his son that love could not be demanded through institutional pressure. Harry's anger collapsed into visible hurt. He stared at Charles, waiting for softer words that did not come. Rain struck the windows while both men remained silent, each convinced the other had misunderstood everything that mattered. Then Harry placed a folder on the table. Inside were notes from private conversations held after the coronation, the ceremony in which Charles had formally received the crown. The younger prince stated that unless a clear agreement was reached, he would discuss those exchanges during an international television interview. That declaration became known inside the directive as the Windsor Library Ultimatum. Charles did not raise his voice. He closed the folder, pushed it back, and told Harry that private family words could not be used as leverage without destroying confidential access forever. The prince stood, said his father had already chosen the institution, and left without looking back. Charles waited until the door closed before summoning William. The monarch ordered a permanent constitutional barrier, a binding rule separating Harry from official crown authority, to be drafted. Yet he refused to sign it immediately. He would face his son once more. That final encounter would bring father and son into the same room again, with neither able to pretend that the next words spoken could ever be withdrawn. The final meeting took place at Clarence House after sunset, with no secretaries, lawyers, or advisors allowed inside. Charles stood near the fireplace when Harry entered, but neither man moved to embrace the other. On a small table rested the unsigned directive. Harry recognized his name before he sat down. For one suspended moment, father and son looked at each other, not as prince and king, but as two men who had run out of safer things to say. Charles pointed towards the document and told his son it had been prepared, but not yet signed. The king offered one final choice. Harry could accept strict boundaries protecting private, royal discussions from publication, interviews, and commercial use. Those boundaries were formal limits designed to keep family conversations separate from public business, because another breach would threaten both personal trust and the stability of the crown. If the younger prince agreed, some private contact might survive. If he refused, the separation would become permanent. Harry heard control where his father claimed protection. He argued that the rules would silence him while palace officials continued shaping stories through unnamed briefings. The prince said dignity could not mean accepting every accusation without response, and loyalty could not demand permanent submission. Charles listened without interruption, but his face hardened when the conversation returned to Windsor. The ultimatum did not feel like the plea of a wounded son, Charles said. It felt like pressure placed on the sovereign. A sovereign is the reigning monarch who carries the crown's final authority. And the fornamatu, hisa fidatils, Theory had mixed a family grievance with a demand placed upon the head of state. The younger prince's jaw tightened. He answered that the palace had stopped hearing him long before he raised his voice. Harry leaned forward and asked the question beneath every argument. Did his father still consider him part of the family? Charles looked directly at him. You are my son every day of my life, but you cannot be part of everything the crown must protect. The words carried love, but they also closed the door Harry had traveled there hoping to reopen. Harry demanded to know whether William had written the directive. The king revealed through that private conversation that he had personally ordered it, though the heir had insisted on one decisive clause. No future monarch could restore Harry's privileges through a quiet promise or informal agreement. Any reversal would require a formal review, documented proof of trust, and the approval of the sovereign. Harry stood. He pushed his chair back into place with deliberate care and said he would not beg for a role inside his own family. Charles reached towards him, but lowered his hand before contact was made. The prince left without turning around. The closing door left the king staring at the unsigned page. Moments later, William entered through a side passage and found his father still standing in silence. Charles asked how far he was truly prepared to go. The conflict was no longer only between Charles and Harry, because the document's true strength depended on the man destined to inherit both the crown and the consequences. William did not celebrate when he saw the directive. He stood behind his father's desk, read every clause, and understood that his own signature would transform a painful family decision into a lasting royal settlement. Charles still held the crown, but the future belonged to the Prince of Wales. Without William, the document could be softened later. With him, Harry's exclusion would survive one reign and become the foundation of the next. William's influence came from his position as heir, the person next in line to inherit the throne and responsibility for the monarchy. Charles could issue the directive during his reign, but the prince's support gave it continuity. Without that agreement, future courtiers might soften the restrictions through private arrangements. With it, no palace official could quietly reopen doors the king had deliberately closed. The directive placed enormous authority in William's hands. Once the current reign ended, he could approve or reject any request from Harry involving confidential briefings, royal residence access, or participation in official ceremonies. The future king understood why such control was necessary. Private conversations had repeatedly become sources of public conflict, while security and due accommodation disputes had kept the institution trapped inside one family argument. Yet William could not read Harry's name without remembering the boy behind it. He recalled walking beside his younger brother after their mother's death. Watching him struggle beneath grief, neither of them could explain. The prince had once believed protecting Harry meant standing between him and danger. Now he was helping build the strongest boundary ever placed around him. Catherine found her husband alone after midnight, with the unsigned copy still open. She studied his face, before asking whether he was acting as a future king or as an angry brother. William did not defend himself. He told her the tragedy was that he could no longer separate the two. She moved closer and reminded him that necessary decisions could protect an institution while still wounding innocent people. William returned to the document and added one narrow protection. Archie and Lilibet would not automatically carry the punishment of their parents' choices. The children could seek independent relationships with the sovereign when older, without Harry's restrictions becoming their inheritance. This amendment mattered because the directive was meant to contain a conflict, not pass it into another generation. Charles accepted that safeguard, but rejected a clause allowing an automatic review after 5 years. The king said, time alone could not rebuild what pressure and exposure had destroyed. Only proven trust could create a path back, and no calendar would be allowed to imitate forgiveness. The signatures followed. Charles wrote first. William added his name beneath it. A palace official then entered with a warning. The directive's first visible consequence would begin within hours. Harry's name was already being removed from an upcoming royal occasion. The ink had barely dried before the directive stopped being private language and began, altering real lives, real invitations, and the fragile expectations Harry still carried. Harry discovered the first consequence not through a palace announcement, but through the disappearance of an invitation. A memorial service he had quietly expected to attend was suddenly removed from his schedule. His office called London and received a single formal answer. Participation was no longer authorized under the new directive. Harry lowered the phone, walked to the window, and remained there in silence, as the meaning of his father's signature became painfully real. Harry had expected the private Windsor memorial to offer something public ceremonies could not. A chance to honor former royal household members while seeing Charles without cameras, speeches, or open confrontation. The gathering was provisional, meaning his attendance had been considered, but not finally confirmed. Now even that narrow opening had vanished. His exclusion mattered, because it showed the directive was not a warning waiting for the Leah. It was already controlling where he could go, whom he could approach, and how close he could come to his father. The second blow arrived moments later. Harry's former access to senior palace aides had been closed, ending the direct channel once used for family arrangements and urgent questions. All future communication would pass through legal and administrative representatives, official intermediaries, who handled rules rather than relationships. The prince was no longer calling people who knew him. He was submitting requests to an institution that had already decided where he stood. Harry opened his calendar and found the memorial date still marked. Disbelief turned into anger as he selected the entry and pressed delete. The screen asked him to confirm. He pressed it again, harder this time, as though force could erase the humiliation along with the appointment. Meghan urged her husband not to answer publicly, while his emotions remained raw. She warned that any immediate statement would be judged more harshly than the decision that provoked it. Harry accused the palace of reducing family grief to procedure, then turned his frustration towards her. The words came quickly. Regret came faster. He apologized, but she understood that the anger had never truly been meant for her. Anne confronted Charles in London through a private, documented conversation, recorded by the king's secretary. The Princess Royal, his sister, and a senior working member of the family, asked whether the directive was being enforced too harshly. She warned that discipline without mercy could begin to resemble vengeance, even when protection was the goal. Charles listened, because she rarely softened difficult truths. Charles responded with one quiet order. Harry would continue receiving direct updates about his father's health, despite losing institutional access. The king was separating the crown from the family bond, refusing to let official punishment become personal disappearance. Harry received that unexpected message while preparing a public response. He deleted the statement, picked up his phone, and called the private number provided beneath the update. Charles did not answer. William did. For the first time since the signing, the brothers were about to speak without advisors between them, and what passed across that line would shift the story away from punishment. William answered after the fourth ring. For several seconds, neither brother spoke. There were no palace secretaries to translate their words, no public statements to hide behind, and no father present to absorb the blame. Harry finally asked one question. Is he all right? William looked towards the closed door of Charles's room and gave an honest answer. The king was stable, but exhausted, grieving, and far less certain than the signed document made him appear. Harry had called after receiving the direct health update his father had ordered. The conversation remained strictly personal, with no lawyers, aides, spouses, or communications teams listening nearby. That absence mattered because nearly every exchange between the brothers had become surrounded by procedure. For once, they were not representatives of rival households. They were two sons, speaking about the man who had raised them. William made the first boundary clear. The directive would remain in force, and he would not apologize for protecting the crown. The crown meant the official authority and responsibilities of the monarchy, separate from the private emotions of the family carrying it. Yet the prince also admitted that something had to change. Every call could not remain a negotiation. Every sentence could not become evidence for the next public argument. Harry asked whether his brother truly believed he had wanted to harm Charles. William paused before answering. He said intention had stopped being enough after private trust collapsed again and again. A person could cause damage without planning it, and the family could no longer survive by judging only what Harry meant rather than what followed. The accusation struck hard. Harry said he had spent years feeling erased, spoken about but rarely spoken to. His anger had often become the only way he knew to prove he still existed. The younger prince admitted this quietly, without the force that usually protected him from shame. William's voice softened. He revealed during that private call that signing the directive had felt like losing his brother all over again. The future king had gained control, but there had been no victory in it. Harry did not answer immediately. Silence held between them, but it no longer felt empty. The brothers finally agreed on one boundary of their own. Future conversations about Charles's health and their children would remain personal. Nothing from those exchanges would enter books, briefings, palace leaks, interviews, or public statements. Harry promised to protect that space. William promised the same. William offered no return to status, duty, or official access. He did, however, promise that Harry could speak directly with their father as a son, provided those calls were not used to reopen constitutional demands. It was not reconciliation, but it was the first honest opening either brother had allowed in years. Then a message reached William's phone. News of the secret directive had entered the press. By sunrise, the document no longer belonged only to the palace, because Britain was about to decide whether Charles had protected the monarchy or broken his family to save it. Britain awoke to a royal rupture, printed in letters large enough to fill an entire newspaper. Front page. Outside Buckingham Palace, television crews formed a wall along the pavement, while tourists stopped beneath the gates to read updates on their phones. Some called the king courageous. Others called the decision cruel. Yet one image captured the national mood more powerfully than any debate. A father's signature enlarged beside a childhood photograph of his two sons. Palace correspondents confirmed that Charles had formally separated Harry from future crown service and confidential royal access. Crown service meant official work carried out in support of the monarch, including ceremonies, public duties, and access to sensitive state information. The announcement mattered because it ended years of uncertainty. Harry was not taking a temporary step back. He was being permanently removed from the possibility of returning as a working royal. Broadcasters repeated the same conclusion throughout the morning. The long argument over whether the younger prince might one day resume official duties was over. Commentators debated whether the directive protected stability or turned family pain into constitutional policy. Every discussion carried the same uncomfortable truth. A private conflict had become a national judgment. Charles watched the coverage with Camilla at Clarence House. The Queen Consort remained beside him, as one commentator described the monarch as a king who had chosen institution over blood. He reached for the remote, switched off the television, and stared ahead. The choice was never that simple, he said quietly. She placed a hand near his, but he did not move. The public saw authority. Camilla saw the father carrying its cost. Harry watched the same debate thousands of miles away. Criticism did not wound him most. What broke through his anger was hearing strangers discuss his relationship with Charles as though it had already died. The prince listened as one caller declared that father and son would never speak again. He lowered his eyes, because the country was turning his deepest fear into accepted fact. Outside Buckingham Palace, copies of the fictional Daily Chronicle rose above the gathering. Its front page carried the words, "The King's Final Line," beside a black wax seal and a 1997 photograph of Charles walking between young William and Harry. A broadcaster read the directive's central clause live, while the crowd divided into applause, disbelief, and silence. The palace then released a brief statement. Harry remained a deeply loved member of the king's family, but he would hold no future authority within the crown. The wording deliberately separated affection from office, confirming that Charles had closed the institutional door without declaring his son emotionally abandoned. As the argument reached its height, Charles stopped listening. The king took out a sheet of personal stationery and began writing by hand. The message contained no advisor's language, no defense of monarchy, and no command. Its final sentence would explain what the directive had truly meant. The country had delivered its opinions, but the true verdict rested inside a private envelope, written by a father who had finally accepted what kingship could preserve, and what it could not. The message from Charles contained no legal language, no royal cipher, and no demand for obedience. It was written simply from a father to his son. The king acknowledged the pain his signature had caused, but refused to pretend that love could erase broken trust. Then came the sentence Harry read 3 times. "This document closes your path back to duty, not your path back to me." In those words, the true verdict finally became clear. Harry held the letter beside the Sovereign Family Status Directive, the formal order defining his permanent separation from official royal service. Nothing inside that document changed. He would not return as a working royal, regain automatic access to confidential briefings, or represent the crown during his father's reign or William's future reign. The decision mattered because it ended years of uncertainty. No private promise, family gathering, or emotional appeal could quietly restore the authority he once carried. The monarchy gained a boundary it had lacked for years. Family membership no longer guaranteed public power, access to royal institutions, or constitutional influence, the ability to affect how the crown performs its official national role. Harry remained the king's son, but that bond could no longer be used as a path back into duty. The separation was painful, yet clear. Harry folded his father's handwritten message carefully. He placed it beside the directive, instead of tearing up either page. The prince finally accepted that the role he had continued fighting over was finished. That acceptance did not erase his anger, but it changed its direction. He no longer had to prove that he still possessed a place inside the working monarchy. He had lost that place. He had not lost his identity as Charles's son. Charles returned to his private study and looked at the empty chair opposite his desk. The king lifted it from that confrontational position and placed it beside the fireplace. The gesture carried a new truth. Harry would no longer sit before him as a petitioner, asking for access, titles, or influence. One day, he might sit beside him as family, with nothing institutional left to negotiate. William kept the private agreement made with his brother. The prince did not restore Harry's status, and their relationship remained damaged. But both men stopped turning every contact into public bargaining. The future king respected the boundary around their father's health and their children. Harry did the same. Neither mistook restraint for reconciliation, yet neither used total separation as the only defense left. Charles's decision became neither a complete victory nor an act of revenge. It marked the moment the monarch separated the survival of the institution from the unresolved love inside his family. Britain had been shocked because the document destroyed the fantasy that Harry could simply return to his former life. Yet it created one final possibility. The signature ended Harry's future inside the working monarchy, but by closing that door completely, Charles preserved the only relationship still worth saving, the imperfect, wounded, and deeply human bond between a father and his son. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.